The kitchen doors of Fusion Orchid Restaurant burst open with such force that the metal frames rattled. Ethan Tran looked up from his station, irritation flashing across his face before morphing into shock. Standing in the doorway was not another waiter rushing through with urgent orders, but a woman with azure skin and silver hair cropped close to her scalp. She wore the unmistakable uniform of a Zalari diplomat, complete with iridescent rank insignia that caught the kitchen's fluorescent lights. Her presence was both commanding and utterly out of place among the stainless steel workstations and sizzling pans. "You cannot be in here," Ethan said, trying to maintain professional composure while his mind raced. He had heard about the Zalari Alliance's growing diplomatic presence on Earth, but he had never expected to encounter one of their officials personally, let alone in his kitchen during the lunch rush. The woman ignored his protest, her golden eyes scanning the preparation area until they fixed on a bowl of brightly colored tropical fruits awaiting processing. With fluid grace that seemed almost unnatural, she strode forward and reached toward the display. "What is this?" Her voice carried an accent Ethan couldn't place, every consonant precise yet somehow alien. "Those are for the tropical fruit salad," Ethan replied, stepping between her and the prep station. "This is a restricted area. I must ask you to leave immediately." "I need to examine these," she stated, not asked. Without waiting for permission, she plucked a ripe banana from the bowl and held it up to the light, studying it with intense curiosity. Ethan felt his professional standards warring with diplomatic courtesy. "Ma'am, I understand you may be unfamiliar with our customs, but this is a commercial kitchen with strict health and safety protocols. If you'd like to try our cuisine, I'd be happy to have someone seat you in the dining room." The Zalari woman turned her penetrating gaze on him. "I am Mizella, Special Envoy for Interspecies Trade Compliance. These specimens," she gestured to the fruit, "require immediate evaluation for biosecurity purposes." Before Ethan could object further, Mizella peeled the banana with surprising dexterity and brought it to her lips. Time seemed to slow as she took a small bite, her eyes widening as the flavor registered. The reaction was instantaneous and alarming. Mizella's pupils dilated dramatically, the golden irises nearly disappearing. A visible tremor ran through her body, and her blue skin took on a subtle luminescence that pulsed like a heartbeat. "What's happening?" Ethan demanded, reaching out instinctively to steady her as she swayed. Mizella's hand shot out, gripping his forearm with unexpected strength. Her touch sent a jolt through him that had nothing to do with physical force. She inhaled sharply, her nostrils flaring. "Your scent," she whispered, her professional demeanor evaporating. "It amplifies the effect." "What effect?" Ethan tried to pull away, but her grip tightened. Mizella released him abruptly, taking several steps back. She pressed a hand to her chest, visibly struggling to compose herself. "I need more," she said, her voice strained. Then, without another word, she turned and fled through the kitchen doors. The silence that followed was broken only by the hiss of food cooking on the stove. Ethan stood frozen, his mind trying to process what had just occurred. The spot where Mizella had touched him still tingled with residual energy. "Chef, everything okay?" one of his line cooks called out, breaking his trance. "Yes," Ethan responded automatically, though nothing felt okay at all. Back to work. As the kitchen returned to its usual rhythm, Ethan found his thoughts returning repeatedly to the strange encounter. That night, unable to sleep, he searched the public databases for information about the Zalari Alliance. What he discovered both fascinated and concerned him. The Zalari were renowned for their strict protocols regarding physical contact with other species. Their biology was uniquely sensitive to certain compounds, which explained the extensive trade regulations they had implemented since joining the Galactic Federation. Most troubling was a footnote in one diplomatic briefing. Zalari representatives undergo extensive biochemical modification to prevent inadvertent bonding reactions during interspecies interactions. The kitchen was quiet when Mizella returned the following evening. Ethan had stayed late to work on menu planning, and he sensed her presence before the door opened. She entered without the dramatic flair of her first visit, moving instead with cautious deliberation. "I need to explain," she said without preamble. Ethan set down his pen. "I think you do." Mizella positioned herself at a careful distance, her posture rigid with self-control. "What happened yesterday was a biosecurity breach. The enzyme in your fruit triggered a reaction. In my endocrine system, specifically my core gland, which regulates emotional and physical responses. Am I sent? You mentioned something about that." Her eyes met his, and for a moment he saw vulnerability beneath her composed exterior. Human pheromones, when combined with certain tropical enzymes, can override our regulatory implants. It's why bananas, mangoes, and several other fruits are on our prohibited import list. "You came here knowing this might happen?" "No," Mizella said firmly. "I came to inspect your supply chain to ensure compliance with our trade agreements." "I didn't expect." She trailed off, her gaze dropping to the floor. "Didn't expect what?" "I didn't expect to want more," she admitted, the words seeming to cost her. "My core is still elevated, despite the suppressants I've taken. When I'm near you, it becomes harder to maintain control." Ethan knew he should ask her to leave, report the incident to his management, perhaps even contact the authorities. Instead, he found himself stepping closer to her. "What would happen if you lost control?" Mizella's breath hitched. "That cannot happen. The diplomatic consequences would be severe. Interspecies emotional bonding is strictly forbidden." "But it's already happening, isn't it?" She didn't answer, but her silence spoke volumes. The air between them seemed to thicken with unspoken tension. Ethan could see the slight tremor in her hands, the way her chest rose and fell with increasingly rapid breaths. "You should go," she whispered, though she made no move to leave herself. "Is that what you want?" "What I want is irrelevant," Mizella replied, but her voice wavered. "My mission, my duty to the Alliance." Ethan reached for an orange from the fruit bowl, holding it out to her. "Just once more." Her resolve crumbled. With trembling fingers, she took the fruit, peeling it with deliberate slowness. As she brought a segment to her lips, their eyes locked, and Ethan felt something fundamental shift between them. The reaction was even stronger this time. Mizella's skin glowed with an inner light, and she gasped as the flavor exploded across her tongue. Without conscious thought, Ethan stepped forward, drawn by a force he couldn't explain. "This is dangerous," Mizella breathed, even as she leaned toward him. "I know," he replied, but neither moved away. The sound of a surveillance drone humming past the kitchen window shattered the moment. Mizella jerked back, her professional mask slamming into place. "I have to go. Don't try to find me," she said, already moving toward the door. "For both our sakes, forget this happened." But as she disappeared into the night, Ethan knew forgetting was impossible. Something had awakened between them, something that transcended species barriers and diplomatic protocols. And he suspected this was only the beginning. The following days passed in a blur of routine tasks that felt increasingly meaningless. Ethan went through the motions of running his kitchen, but his mind constantly drifted to Mizella. He found himself studying every blue-skinned figure that passed the restaurant windows, heart racing at the possibility of seeing her again. His distraction didn't go unnoticed. Sarah, his sous chef, cornered him during a quiet moment between lunch and dinner service. "What's going on with you?" she demanded. "You've been off your game all week." "Nothing. Just tired." Ethan deflected, but Sarah's knowing look told him she wasn't buying it. "This wouldn't have anything to do with that Zalari official who barged in here, would it?" Ethan's silence confirmed her suspicions. Sarah sighed and leaned against the prep counter. "Be careful, chef. The Federation doesn't mess around when it comes to unauthorized interspecies contact." "It's not like that," Ethan protested weakly. "Isn't it?" Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Look, I've seen the way you've been acting. Whatever happened between you two, it's not worth risking your career or worse." Before Ethan could respond, the kitchen security system chimed. Both turned to see two figures in dark suits entering through the service entrance, their badges identifying them as Federation compliance officers. "Ethan Tran?" the taller one asked, his tone leaving no room for pleasantries. "Yes." We need to ask you some questions about an incident involving Zalari's special envoy, Mizella. The interrogation lasted hours. The officers were thorough, professional, and increasingly suspicious as Ethan maintained his story of a simple misunderstanding. They showed him surveillance footage from nearby cameras, pointed out inconsistencies in his timeline, and pressed for details about the unauthorized biological interaction. We're aware that Special Envoy Mizella's biosignatures showed significant elevation following her visit to your establishment, the lead officer stated. This suggests exposure to a controlled substance. She ate some fruit, Ethan replied, keeping his voice steady. That's all. Mr. Tran, lying to Federation officers is a serious offense. We have reason to believe there was physical contact between you and the envoy. She grabbed my arm when she lost her balance. Is that a crime? The officers exchanged glances. It could be, depending on the circumstances. We'll be monitoring this situation closely. Any further contact with Special Envoy Mizella must be reported immediately. As they finally left, Ethan slumped in his chair, exhaustion and worry battling for dominance. He knew they hadn't believed him, but without concrete evidence, they couldn't prove anything. That night, as he locked up the restaurant, a shadow detached itself from the alley wall. Mizella emerged, her diplomatic uniform replaced by a nondescript hooded jacket. They questioned you, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes. Are you okay? Mizella's laugh held no humor. My superiors detected the anomaly in my core readings. I've been placed under observation. Coming here is unwise. Then why did you? She stepped closer, close enough that he could see the conflict in her golden eyes. Because I can't stop thinking about it. About you. The taste, the sensation. It's unlike anything I've experienced. Mizella, don't, she interrupted. Don't make this harder. I came to warn you. They're watching both of us now. Any further contact could trigger an interspecies incident. And yet here you are, Ethan pointed out softly. The space between them seemed to shrink without either moving. Mizella's breathing quickened, and Ethan could see the familiar glow beginning beneath her skin. This is madness, she whispered, but her hand reached out, fingers hovering just above his chest. One touch, and my core could destabilize completely. The bonding process would begin, and there would be no stopping it. Would that be so terrible? Her eyes snapped to his, a mix of longing and fear. You don't understand. Zalari bonding is permanent, irreversible. It would link us on a molecular level. My people would consider it contamination. And what do you consider it? Mizella's hand trembled in the air between them. Freedom, she breathed, the word barely audible. A mechanical whir interrupted the moment. Both looked up to see a surveillance drone descending toward them, its red scanning beam sweeping the alley. Run, Mizella commanded, grabbing Ethan's hand without thinking. The contact sent a surge of energy through both of them, her skin erupting in brilliant blue light. They sprinted through the narrow passages between buildings, the drone in pursuit. Mizella led them through a maze of back streets, her enhanced physiology allowing her to navigate the darkness with ease. Behind them, more drones joined the chase, their collective hum growing louder. This way, Mizella directed, pulling him into an abandoned warehouse. They ducked behind rusted machinery as searchlights swept through broken windows. Your hand, Ethan noticed, realizing they were still connected. The glow. It's too late to worry about that now, Mizella replied, her voice thick with emotion. The bonding has already begun. Even if they catch us, they can't reverse it. The gravity of her words sank in. They had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, triggered a process that would forever change both their lives. We need to get out of the city, Ethan said. I have a friend with a cabin in the mountains. No surveillance, no drones. Mizella nodded, but her expression remained troubled. They'll never stop looking for us. The Alliance can't afford to let this become public knowledge. If other Zalari learned that bonding with humans was possible, let me worry about that. Ethan squeezed her hand, marveling at how natural the contact felt despite her alien biology. Right now, we need to move. They waited until the drone patrol passed, then slipped out through a loading dock. The city stretched before them, a labyrinth of potential dangers and hidden observers. Every shadow could hide a Federation agent, every camera a threat to their fragile freedom. As they made their way toward the outskirts, Ms. Ellis suddenly stopped. "Wait, there's something I need to show you." She led him to an unremarkable office building, using a complex series of touches on a hidden panel to unlock a service entrance. Inside, they descended several levels until reaching a door marked with Zalari symbols. "What is this place?" Ethan asked. "A safe house. Off the official records," Mizella explained, entering a code. "Used by diplomatic staff for sensitive situations." The door opened to reveal a small but well-equipped apartment. Mizella immediately moved to a wall safe, extracting a sleek device that she attached to her forearm. "This will mask my biosignature temporarily," she said, "but it won't last long. We have maybe 12 hours before they can track me again." Ethan watched as she gathered supplies with military efficiency. "You've planned for this." "Not this exactly," she admitted, "but in my line of work, contingencies are essential." She paused, turning to face him fully. "Ethan, you need to understand what's happening. The bonding process, once initiated, will continue whether we are together or apart. You'll begin experiencing changes." "What kind of changes?" "Heightened senses, increased empathy, possibly some bioluminescence." She gestured to her own softly glowing skin. "Our physiologies will synchronize over time. It's why interspecies bonding is so feared. It fundamentally alters both parties." The weight of their situation settled over them. They weren't just running from authorities. They were at the center of a biological and diplomatic crisis that could reshape relations between their species. "Are you afraid?" Ethan asked. Mizella considered the question. "Yes, but not of the bonding itself. I'm afraid of what they'll do to stop us. The Alliance has extreme measures for containing biological threats. Then we need to expose this before they can act," Ethan said. "Show people that what's happening between us isn't a threat, but a possibility." "You want to go public?" Micella's eyes widened. "That would cause chaos. Or it could start a conversation. How many others like you are out there, suppressing their natural responses, denied the chance to connect?" Mizella fell silent, conflict playing across her features. Finally, she moved to a communications console built into the wall. "There's a secure channel I can access. One transmission before they trace it." Together, they crafted a message, a brief but powerful statement about their accidental discovery and its implications. Micella's fingers flew over the alien interface, encrypting and preparing the broadcast. "Once I send this, there's no going back," she warned. Ethan took her free hand, feeling the warm pulse of energy between them. "There's already no going back." She pressed the transmission key. For a moment, nothing happened. Then alarms began blaring throughout the building. Security screens flickered to life, showing Federation forces converging on their location. "Time to go," Mizella said, grabbing the supply pack she'd prepared. They fled through a series of maintenance tunnels, emerging in a parking structure several blocks away. A nondescript vehicle waited in a shadowed corner, another contingency Mizella had arranged. As they drove toward the city limits, news feeds began lighting up with their message. Social media exploded with reactions ranging from fascination to outrage. The Federation issued immediate denials, but the seed had been planted. "They'll try to discredit us," Mizella said, monitoring the feeds. "Claim it's a hoax or a terrorist act. Let them try," Ethan replied. "The truth has a way of coming out." They reached the mountain cabin just as dawn broke. It was rustic but secure, surrounded by dense forest that would make aerial surveillance difficult. As they settled in, exhaustion finally caught up with them. "What now?" Ethan asked, watching Mizella remove her biosignature mask. "Now we wait," she said, "and hope our message reaches the right people before the Federation finds us." In the days that followed, they fell into a strange domesticity. Ethan cooked while Mizella monitored communications and security systems. The bonding process continued, bringing unexpected moments of shared sensation and emotion. When Ethan cut his finger while chopping vegetables, Mizella felt a sympathetic sting. When she experienced joy at a particularly beautiful sunset, he found himself smiling without knowing why. It's accelerating, Mizella observed one evening. The connection. It usually takes months to reach this level. Is that bad? Different, she corrected. Unprecedented. Perhaps humans and Zalari are more compatible than anyone imagined. Their message continued to spread despite Federation efforts to suppress it. Underground networks shared their story, and reports emerged of other Zalari experiencing similar reactions to human contact. The carefully maintained barriers between species began to crack. On the seventh day, they received an encrypted communication from a group calling themselves the Interspecies Liberation Front. The message contained coordinates and a simple phrase: "You are not alone." It could be a trap, Ethan warned. Everything could be a trap at this point, Mizella replied. But if there are others like us, they decided to take the risk. The coordinates led them to a remote facility that appeared abandoned from the outside. Inside, they found a gathering of couples, human and Zalari, all showing signs of the bonding process. "Welcome," greeted a tall Zalari male with green-tinged skin. Beside him stood a human woman whose hand rested comfortably in his. "I'm Dr. Vorian, formerly of the Zalari Science Council. This is my partner, Elena. There are more of you?" Mizella asked, astonishment evident in her voice. "Dozens now," Elena replied. "Your broadcast gave others the courage to come forward. The Federation's worst nightmare is coming true. Natural bonding between our species is not only possible, but beneficial." They were led through the facility, shown laboratories where sympathetic scientists studied the bonding process, communication centers coordinating resistance efforts, and living quarters for those seeking refuge. "The Alliance has kept this secret for generations," Dr. Vorian explained. They discovered early on that certain humans could trigger the bonding response in Zalari, but they feared it would undermine their control. So they created the suppressants, Mizella realized. "Made us believe it was for our protection." "Exactly, but you've changed everything. The Federation can't maintain the lie once people see living proof that interspecies bonding isn't just safe, it's natural." Ethan felt a surge of hope. They weren't fleeing anymore. They were part of something larger. But their optimism was short-lived. Alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. Security feeds showed Federation forces surrounding the building, heavy weapons deployed. "They found us," Elena said grimly. "Everyone to the evacuation tunnels." Chaos erupted as people scrambled to escape. Ethan and Mizella found themselves separated in the confusion, pushed along different corridors by the fleeing crowd. "Ethan," Mizella's voice carried over the din. Through a gap in the crowd, he saw her being herded toward an exit on the opposite side of the facility. "Go," he shouted back. "I'll find you." The last thing he saw was her anguished face before the crowd swept them apart. Explosions rocked the building as Federation forces breached the outer defenses. Ethan emerged from an emergency exit into dense forest, part of a small group that included Dr. Vorian. Behind them, the facility burned, smoke rising into the morning sky. "Mizella," Ethan gasped. "Where's Mizella?" "The others went north," Vorian replied. "There's a rendezvous point. If she made it out, she'll head there." They trekked through the wilderness for hours, avoiding Federation patrols. The bond between Ethan and Mizella had grown strong enough that he could sense her general direction, a pull in his chest that guided him northward. Finally, they reached a clearing where several groups had gathered. Ethan's heart leapt when he saw a familiar figure with blue skin and silver hair. "Mizella." She turned at his voice, relief flooding her features. They ran toward each other, embracing without hesitation. The contact sent waves of energy through them both, their bond celebrating the reunion. "I thought I'd lost you," Mizella whispered. "Never," Ethan replied, holding her close. Around them, the other bonded pairs watched with understanding smiles. Dr. Vorian addressed the assembled group. "We've lost our facility, but not our cause. The Federation thinks they can suppress the truth through force, but they're wrong. Every day, more pairs find each other. Every day, The old barriers crumble. Elena stepped forward. We've established contact with sympathetic elements within both governments. There are those who see the potential for a new era of cooperation between our species. What do we do now? Someone asked. We survive, Vorian replied. We grow our network, and we show the galaxy that love knows no species. In the weeks that followed, they established a new underground community. Ethan and Mizella worked alongside other bonded pairs, helping newcomers adjust to the process, sharing their story with those still hesitant to embrace the change. The Federation continued its crackdown, but public opinion began to shift. Images of peaceful bonded couples contrasted sharply with violent enforcement actions. Protests erupted on multiple worlds, demanding an end to the separation policies. One evening, as Ethan prepared dinner in their modest quarters, Mizella entered with news. The Zalari High Council has agreed to emergency talks with Earth's representatives. They're discussing lifting the bonding prohibition. Ethan set down his knife, hardly daring to hope. Really, our message started something bigger than we imagined, Mizella said, moving into his arms. They can't ignore it anymore. As they held each other, Ethan remembered their first encounter in his kitchen, how a simple taste of fruit had sparked a revolution. The irony wasn't lost on him. Can I taste it? Just once? He murmured, echoing her original request. Mizella laughed, the sound full of joy and promise. You can taste it forever. The future remained uncertain. There would be challenges ahead, political negotiations, cultural adjustments, and the ongoing evolution of their bond. But as they stood together, human and Zalari, they knew they had already won the most important battle. They had proven that connection transcends biology, that love recognizes no boundaries, and that sometimes the most profound changes begin with the simplest of questions. Can I taste it? Just once. The revolution had started with a banana in a restaurant kitchen. It would end with the dawn of a new era for both their species. And at its heart were two people who dared to reach across the divide and discover that what separated them was far less powerful than what could unite them. As diplomatic shuttles began arriving at the nearby spaceport, carrying negotiators from both sides, Ethan and Mizella watched from a hillside. Their skin glowed softly in the twilight, a visible sign of their permanent bond. No matter what happens, Mizella said, I'm glad it was you. Always, Ethan replied, squeezing her hand. Below them, the future of interspecies relations was being decided. But up on that hill, two hearts beat as one, living proof that the greatest barriers are the ones we create ourselves, and the greatest freedom comes from daring to break them down. The stars emerged as darkness fell, no longer separating two worlds, but connecting them in an infinite tapestry of possibility. And somewhere in that vast cosmic dance, other pairs were finding each other, tasting the forbidden fruit of connection, and discovering that the sweetest flavors are those we share. Their story had begun with curiosity and a single bite. It would continue with courage, love, and the unshakable belief that understanding between species wasn't just possible, it was inevitable. All it took was someone willing to ask, can I taste it? Just once. And someone brave enough to say yes.